Okay, I'm going to get started in the lab for Chapter 7. I have saved a copy of my template into my Chapter 7 Labs folder and entered the description and the various comments. I've also imported the scanner for once. uh, I looked ahead in the lab handout and noticed that we're going to be letting the user do this over and over, so I've edited the description accordingly. So now is the time to set up your template, and then we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing I usually do whenever I am faced with a program handout such as this is I take a good look and I actually I either mark it up on the handout or I make notes in a separate document to just understand what I'm supposed to be doing. So for one thing, I need to find the number of digits, and it has some information here about how to calculate that. So I think I'm going to take this moment and just rewrite this in comment form in the Java to keep myself organized. So it looks like it says I need to keep dividing the integer by 10 until I reach 0 and then figure out how many times I did that. Okay. I'm not sure where it's going to go yet, so I'm just going to stick it in main for now. So keep dividing the user's number by 10 until 0 is reached. Keep track of the number of divisions that were done. That is the number of digits, and then I'm going to have to report that to user. Report the number of digits to the user. Okay, so that's a pile of work that I have to do. So I save that and go back to my program handout. Okay, also it says please use a separate method for scanning in the user's input. And it says I can use the textbook's example of the scan double. So I can go over and find that and use that as a guide. It looks like I am going to be asking for valid input, and I have to handle stuff that's not numbers, so that's one thing. The other thing is it looks like I need to handle the number being in a valid range. In this case, between 1 and some large number, which I happen to know is the maximum integer value. Okay, let me just write that in comment form. It has told me I need to do it in a separate method, and it actually told me the parameters here. It says please take a scanner and 2 ints as parameters and return the valid integer. So I think I have enough information to write the method and maybe even the Java doc. I'm going to start with the Java doc actually, why not? So given a scanner, a low bound, and a high bound, collect an integer from the user, check for an integer on the input, and also make sure the number entered is between low bound and high bound inclusive. That means it includes the low bound and the high bound numbers. Okay, that's the description. Now I can actually enter my params. I guess I'll call it something like in, maybe, the scanner object to use for input. I'm also supposed to take a low bound and a high bound, so low bound, the lowest number the user can enter, high bound, highest number the user can enter. And finally, the return is supposed to be the valid number entered by the user. Now I've done my Java doc. Don't have to do that now. Don't have to remember to go back and do it. And I can actually just look at the Java doc and fill in my method definition. Public static, I'm returning an int, and I just have to figure out what to call it. I'm using scan double as a guide, so maybe I'll call it scan int. And I'm picking a scanner, which I said was named in, an integer that's named low bound, and an integer named high bound. I'm not sure what it's going to do yet, so for right now I'm going to return -1 and just make sure I can build. So quick build, I'm on the build line. I can build, can I run? Yes, okay, perfect. In the next example, I'll start filling in some more code for the scanInt method.